Okay, Leviticus 21 to 24. What we're kind of going to do is hit some high spots of a couple of these chapters, and then we're going to spend some time in the feast. And that's actually going to be a jumping off point for what I really want to talk to you guys about today, what God's really been showing me this week. And, well, we'll get there in a minute, but basically how this feast cycle parallels a lot of different things in our lives. And not just, we usually like to lay down the feast up here. We'll put the menorah, 7 days of creation, all these different things. Well, I'm going to look at it a little bit differently today, in a couple of different ways. But first, before we get to that, just a couple of quick points, see if you guys noticed anything in Leviticus 21 and 22. Again, we've got the Israelites are set apart from the world. The tribe of Levi is set apart within the Israelites. The family of Aaron is set apart within the Levites. And Aaron and his sons are going to be the priesthood. And we've kind of got some different rules here for them regarding kind of just their everyday life. Did anyone think it was odd that the priest can make himself unclean for immediate family, but not the in-laws? Did you notice that?
Or a sister that's, if she's married, then he
can't make himself unclean for her? Yeah, if she has a covering.
Yeah.
But not the in-laws. Why?
Because they're covered, maybe they're covered under that father.
Maybe. Have we had in-law troubles back before Leviticus 21? That's the first thought I had. Was like, oh, we've had a little in-law trouble. Maybe we shouldn't get messing around with that. But anyway, that was just a little funny thing I kind of noticed. So don't make yourself unclean for the in-laws. But they are set apart. They are different, and they do have their specific roles, specific things they have to do. And of course, we were originally called to be that kingdom of priests. So we kind of need to pay attention to some of that stuff, I think. Even though we don't have a temple to go make offerings to, we don't have some of these ritualistic things in place, we have them kind of figuratively in how we approach the Father. And that's kind of what we've been talking about, is approaching the Father the last 2 or 3 weeks. Like I said, I just want to hit a couple of things real quick. If you have any comments on 21 or 22, feel free to bring them on, because God had me work on something totally different with these feasts this time around. So, but the good thing is, the last 2 weeks I've had a plan going in, and God changes it like at the last minute. One week it was Thursday night. He kind of changed things. Last week it was Wednesday. Well, this was like last Sunday. So I've had a whole week to get ready for it. It's such a blessing, right, honey? I've been having to stay up late nights preparing stuff. So. And then, I just wanted to bring something out of Leviticus 22. We get kind of unacceptable sacrifices, like a reminder that, bring an animal without blemish, and here are some blemishes. It's kind of like the list of, this is what don't bring, because we can say, well, what's a blemish to you is different from a blemish to me, and well, he kind of takes all that ambiguity out of it here. He says, none of this stuff. And one thing that really jumped out at me, and I kind of like the way this audio Bible read this one, was in verses 31 through 33 of chapter 22. Keep my commands and follow them. I am the Lord. Do not profane my holy name. I must be acknowledged as holy by the Israelites. I am the Lord who makes you holy, who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord. 3 times, once in each verse, I am the Lord. At the beginning of 22, he said the same thing. Tell Aaron and his sons to treat with respect the sacred offerings the Israelites consecrate to me, so they will not profane my holy name. I am the Lord. At the end of the chapter, of course, that's not the way it was written in chapter form. At the end of the chapter, it's again 3 times. And what's really interesting is there is an olive tav in verse 32. Do not profane, in the way it reads in the Hebrew, my name holy. The word name has the olive tav attached to it, just in case you keep track of those kind of things at home. And Jimbo, I didn't look, but in verse 1, does it have an olive tav, or verse 2, pardon me, on the holy name there? I forgot to look at that one.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good.
Yes.
So the bookends of 22 is our Messiah, who was without sin, had no blemishes, he was perfect. He was an acceptable sacrifice, would you say? Yeah, absolutely he was.
So it's actually Hashem, it's not just Shem there.
Yeah, a little extra.
It would be Hashem.
Yeah, with that on there.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's kind of just a couple things that jumped out at me. Was don't make yourself unclean for your in-laws. Have acceptable sacrifices, and Yeshua is the ultimate acceptable sacrifice. But what I really want to spend time on today are these feasts, this feast cycle. And I love chapter 23 just because of the way it's arranged. How many feasts are in chapter 23?
All of them.
All 7, 8,
8.
the Sabbath.
Thank you. Yeah, because the Sabbath is included in this one. Which I love that because it kind of is, in a way, a feast. It's not our typical 7 feasts, but it's
It's a moed.
a moed, it's an appointed time. Because you remember, the beginning of 23, these are my appointed feasts. The appointed feasts of Yahweh, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies, and the Sabbath is the first one. So it is an appointed time. It
And
is,
that assembly, that's the rehearsal.
yes, that's the rehearsal. And you're going to see a really big picture of rehearsal here in a little bit. Or at least I did in what I was studying this week, and I just hope I allow God to speak it out to you guys. So,
That's the key word there, God's feasts.
yes, God's feast, not the feast of the Jews,
Right.
although that's what they're called in the New Testament a lot, and who knows why.
Because
Because
Ooh,
of our
ooh,
reading
ooh.
in Isaiah.
Because what?
Because of our reading in Isaiah, how God says he hates their feast, he actually changes it to their feast because they're doing it their own way.
Excellent. Everybody catch that?
No.
One more time, loud and proud.
Oh, well, because of the reading in Isaiah
Louder.
this week. In Isaiah, in our reading, God says that he hates their feasts that they're doing, even though they were celebrating his feast, but they were doing it their own way. And so it wasn't his feast anymore, it was their feasts.
And another piece of that, the feast of the Jews in the New Testament, well, who was left in Jerusalem? What tribe?
Judah.
So there's kind of a practical, well, that's who was there, was the Jews, the tribe of Judah. But then there's a much deeper meaning that this is the way they were doing things, which was different in some ways from the way God said to do them. So one thing,
Wasn't Benjamin there too?
well, yeah,
Because in Paul from the tribe of Benjamin?
yes.
Okay.
Well, in a nutshell, it was just Judah that was left. Benjamin wasn't
Judah
exactly a
was ruling.
big tribe.
Judah
was
was
ruling.
Ruling, okay.
They were kind of, assimilated
When he
in.
says Jews, he's talking about Benjamin, Judah, and the Levites.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Because the word Jew did not mean Judah. It meant the tribe, the country of Judea.
Right. Yes. All right, so what we're not going to do is do a long, lengthy looking at every feast and the form and what we do and how we do it and all that kind of, because we've kind of done that before, and we do that when we actually keep the feast. We talk a lot about them. But I want to bring out some points in each one, and then we're going to tweak it a little bit. So this, whoops, let me write it so it's going to be a little more legible, is a feast cycle. Because we go through it every year. We have Sabbath every week. We have start Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Shavuot, trumpets, atonement, Sukkot. Then we do it again the next year, do it again the next year. So it cycles. So it's a feast cycle. The way he's got this laid out, Sabbath is the first one, the first appointed time, and we meet with our Creator. 6 days you work, you rest, sacred assembly, a Sabbath to Yahweh. So, pretty simple. Not a lot to it. Just some cross-references for you, if you're interested. Exodus 20, verse 8, says to remember the Sabbath by keeping it holy. Exodus 31:14 says to observe it because it is holy. And then in Ezekiel 20:12 12, it says that it is a sign, and it shows that the people are holy, set apart. So remember it because it is holy, Genesis. Observe it, and it's a sign that will show that you are holy. All right, so that's the first one, Sabbath, beginning of the cycle. Passover.
On the Sabbath there, Phil,
Yeah,
you ought to put up there Genesis 2:3. That's where it started.
yep, that's where it started. That's where it was set apart as holy, Genesis 2:3. Thank you, Mel, yes. All right, Passover. Apply the blood, which that's all you can do is apply the blood. You can't protect yourself any other way, and the blood isn't a physical barrier to anything, but it's a spiritual barrier because it's the blood of our Messiah. Because when you read in the Hebrew, when God sees the blood has the olive tav attached to it. So, yes, apply the blood, and then your past is buried. If you remember the story of the Exodus coming out. Let's see. And in 12, Exodus 12, we get the instructions for the here and now, and then we get the future instructions as well. Going to be a statute throughout your generations, teach it to your children, so on and so forth. Okay, so we meet with him once, we start to meet with him. We meet this once a week, kind of our first introduction in the feast cycle. Passover, apply the blood, receive the instructions, do it all the time, remember what goes on, the past is buried. Not forgotten, buried, because you know what's back there, but you don't want to go back and repeat it. Unless until you get out to the desert and you whine and cry and complain and you want to go back there again, but we won't talk about that. Unleavened bread. Let's see. What do we do with unleavened bread?
That's it.
Remove all the leaven out of your house, out of your life.
Yes.
Out of your life.
All about removing sin. Taking out the yeast, which is the picture of the sin, the physical act to remind us of what the spiritual concept behind it. Removing the sin, eating the matzah. And one thing that I knew but didn't snap until I was reading this and going back through it, remember what they took out of Egypt was the dough. Hadn't been baked, hadn't been put through the fire, hadn't anything done to it until they were outside of Egypt. So that's where the heat was applied to the dough, which I don't know what real aspect that has, but it's just kind of an interesting concept that didn't really hit until I read this. It's like, oh, wait a minute, they didn't take bread, they took dough. Went out and then baked it. So they didn't take their bread with them, they just took the dough, the makings of it. So, yes,
Well,
John?
and I think maybe in line with what you're talking about is the idea that you're supposed to take it out because you don't have time to do it now. I mean, because that's, obviously that was part of it, is if they'd had another week, they probably would have baked matzah to take it and ready. They didn't have time to do any of that.
Yeah.
So it was like, just have the ingredients or what's needed, take it out of bondage.
Get out now, quick,
Yeah,
boom.
get out
Yeah,
of bondage and
That's a good
you'll
point.
prepare it later.
yeah. It'll come later, yeah. All right, and then first fruits, which this is, as you know, Leviticus 23 is the only place we get the instructions about first fruits. And it's, the way I think about it, is the first of the first harvest. It's like the best of the best. What we don't have in the Exodus story is first fruits, right? Or do we?
Well, I was just gonna ask, don't we actually get kind of a first mention of first fruits though when Isaac goes up to the mountain with, or Abraham goes up to the mountain with Isaac? Doesn't he mention a first fruit there?
It doesn't mention a feast of first fruit though, but
No.
maybe a type of first fruits, yeah.
Yeah, but there, I mean,
Makes
that
sense.
concept, that idea of first fruit,
Yes,
I think is the
Yeah.
first time I can think of it being mentioned.
yeah. Which fits with, you know, in Exodus 12, what happened to the firstborn that didn't have a blood applied on the doorpost?
Sacrificed.
God took him. Then when you get into 13, let's see, Exodus 12 took the firstborn. And we have the instructions, they left, Pharaoh kicks them out. Exodus 13, we get instructions on consecrating the firstborn.
13:1, the Lord spoke to Moses, consecrate every firstborn in Mount Sinai.
Exactly. So he took him, and he said, in one kind of modern day, well, if you don't give him to me, I'm going to take him anyway. You know, I just did. See what I just did? Your firstborn belonged to me. Not to sacrifice him and kill him and throw him in the ground, but your firstborn belonged to me. Everything firstborn. Not just your firstborn children, but the livestock, the crops, everything. Offer the best up to him. So that's kind of our picture of first fruits. What I really need is I need the big board for this one today. But we'll survive. Okay.
Bill, what did you write on the bottom, Exodus 13? What was it?
Consecrating.
Oh.
Consecrating the firstborn.
After first or first?
Born.
Harvest.
First of first harvest.
Oh.
And then Exodus 12 took the firstborn. Exodus 13 consecrating the firstborn. This says harvest to me. I can read it.
I see it now, Phil.
Plus I
see
wrote it. See, and we're actually going to talk a little bit about optical illusions and things later. So that's the first
We
test.
we don't actually get a mention of first again, in the sense of first fruits with Cain and Abel, do we?
We do. Well, we get a mention of best.
Yeah,
We get Cain brought some offerings. Abel brought the best.
right.
We get that distinction.
Yeah, we don't actually get, I don't think we actually.
Which, when you go into looking at the offerings, it lines up with the first,
Right.
but it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't say anything
Yeah.
about first, but it does say best. So
He's also our first fruits offering,
he is our first fruits offering, definitely.
when you rose from the dead.
Yep. Okay. I'm gonna have to erase this. Anybody need it? Okay.
You can go on YouTube and get it if you need it.
That's right.
That's true. You can. Can you actually see it though?
Yeah,
Okay, good. Just
Yeah.
making sure.
I mean, you can see it as well as I can see it.
The black marker comes through well.
Yeah, that's true.
The red doesn't come off so well.
Not as much. All right. I'm gonna write these over here just for a moment. Sabbath, Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits leads us up to,
Shavuot.
there we go, which is coming up in just about 3 weeks. This is Shabbat number 4, day 28 of counting the Omer. All right, so Feast of Weeks. Seven sevens plus 1. And what happens at Shavuot? What kind of offering? Okay. What kind of grain? Old grain, new grain, stale grain?
First?
So this is like the first of the second harvest.
Right.
We look at it a lot as barley is early, wheat is a little bit later. But it's the first, as they're just starting to sprout, snip them and go. Because they're going to keep growing. You're going to have a harvest a little bit later on in the fall, but this is the beginning of it. Take it in.
So it's wheat.
Yes, from my understanding, this is wheat. All right. Now, one thing,
Yeah, because Passover's well.
something big kind of happened in Acts chapter 2 on this day, right?
Holy Spirit.
Which is going to be key for us talking a little bit later.
Happened at Mount Sinai too.
Happened in Mount Sinai. Yep.
That first Pentecost.
And where does the Holy Spirit first appear?
Genesis 1.
Just making sure. And for the Israelites, it appeared when?
So,
Mount Sinai.
Back up a little bit. What led them out of Egypt?
oh,
The
the
Pillar of cloud.
Correct.
Yeah. So we go from Genesis, we go all the way through Exodus,
But
all
the
the way
tongues of
to the end.
fire didn't happen until Sinai.
Right.
Do what?
Fire at Sinai,
The tongues of fire happened at Sinai.
yeah.
What is it?
And then what
Cloud-
appeared as tongues of
clouds
fire.
Fire during the night.
Yeah, no, but the tongues of fire where it was actually like where we get the picture in Acts chapter 2, that was the actual, they knew what was going on at that period, and they knew the significance of it because of what happened at Sinai when the Spirit came down and actually gave them
Understanding,
understanding,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well,
which is huge and key.
I heard a teaching from Melissa Elwine where she was talking about the menorah in the tabernacle was representative of the Holy Spirit. That's flames of fire too.
That makes perfect sense because the
Well,
oil
yeah,
represents the
that-
Spirit.
Yeah, 'cause that is
Yeah.
the seven spirits of God.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mhm.
Speaking of, did you bring the flyer or send it out already? July 26th and 27th,
Yeah.
Lovington. Alyssa will be there doing the Creation Gospel Friday and then all day Saturday. So we got a flyer that didn't scan right into our computer, so we're going to send that out. But it's like $25.
It's on her website.
It's on our website?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can go there and get information there too.
Yeah, but it's like July 26th, 27th, Alyssa in Lovington. And in 2 weeks from today, I'll get the plug in now, Rico, and no, I'm not getting paid, although it's an unwritten contract that I signed, that I get paid for every mention I make of his teaching. But
What's he teaching?
I hope he teaches on the ancient Near East and adoption and baptism and all that stuff, because it is absolutely astoundingly mind-blowing. It will change the way you look at things.
And are we still in here as of?
As of right now, we're still in this room. Yeah.
That's not gonna last long.
Do we know if we actually have the day available if need be to move over?
Yes.
I don't have a clue.
We do? Okay.
All right, we do. Ty says we do, so. All right, so Shavuot, the first part of the second harvest, and we see lots of examples of the Spirit arriving on people and giving understanding later on. And this is going to be a really, really key one, this Spirit of understanding for us here in just a little bit. So, after Shavuot,
That's true.
Feast of Trumpets. And this is, it's kind of the one day, the one feast that you're actually having to really pay close attention to. Because nobody says, hey, the month started, start counting. And so you count to 14 or 15 or whatever. This one is you got to be kind of aware and looking. Not much to it. As opposed, the way it's listed here is like what? A sentence?
Yeah.
Basically. No, I tried 2 sentences, sorry, in the NIV. So it's rest, it's assemble, and blow trumpets, right?
What if it says a memorial of blowing trumpets? What are we remembering?
What are we remembering?
Trumpet on Sinai.
Yeah.
It's also shouting, day of shouting. I've
Yeah.
heard. So, you wonder if that was the 7th day when Joshua brought the walls down.
That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think you should have homework this week and figure out if that was the actual day.
Yes, teacher.
A 500-word essay on whether or not.
Oh, I'm saved. You're not the teacher. You're just a facilitator.
I'm just a facilitator, never mind. Dang it. Wait, I can't assign homework, can I? Man, we gotta change the contract up.